Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. Good topic? Let's do it. What's an experience that has changed your perspective on life? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I'm a social worker and used to help families settle in the United States. One day I was talking to a lady from the Democratic Republic of Congo to go get some clothes. We were stuck in traffic and I'm sitting there annoyed at how long the trip is taking. This lady puts her hands up and starts praising God and telling me that when she was back home, she had prayed so hard for these roads, these cars, all of these people. It was really a humbling and eye-opening experience. I think of her often. She made me so much more grateful for the everyday things, even the inconveniences. After my dad died in 2023 of Huntington's disease, a fatal genetic disorder, I decided to get tested in late 2024. I'm gene positive, meaning I will develop the disease at some point later in life, but am not currently showing symptoms. Although I'm only 26, I've begun working toward my bucket list, and only 2 months ago, I crossed off my number one wish of visiting Germany. It was 2 weeks of everything I could have asked for. I have a relatively successful career, which I enjoy and am thankful for, which allows me to check off these items from my bucket list. Knowing that my life expectancy is maybe 40 at best, based on my CAG repeats, it's given me the chance, or maybe the reminder, to live my only life as well as I can. I'd been suffering through some serious burnout through most of 2024. I finally had enough in September and planned to go camping off-grid. Cell coverage worked at a campsite, nowhere else. No running water, no power except a solar charger for the phone. I rented a canoe, and while paddling back to my camp, I saw a strange rock in the middle of the river. I paddled closer. It was a black bear cub, drowned, tangled up in the weeds, just under the surface. It must have just happened. It was perfectly intact. To which I said to myself out loud in the middle of nowhere, "Don't get tangled up in the weeds, you'll drown." I stuck around another 10 days at the camp and passed the bear 3 more times on my way to other areas. It's haunted me for a while now. Getting diagnosed with a cancerous brain tumor in my early 30s and the subsequent surgery and brain damage recovery, followed by a big medical thing happening to my spouse. It sucked. It continues to not be super awesome. The cancer will eventually come back, and given the current technology, I won't live until 80, may not even make it to 70. My spouse and I had been putting off so many things for later in favor of responsibilities. No more. We're working on sneaking in fun shit, maybe some of the bigger treats we've had on our lists for years. I disappeared for a little under 3 years. I lived in a state farce and trespassed and stole a bunch because I thought I was beating a system meant to enslave me through debt. I was uncomfortable for a long time and realized how much it sucks to be alone. Work isn't bad and debt gives you something to build with. I'm way more positive about life now than back then, and it's because I realized that my ideals were bullshit. My friend's attempted suicide. Life's fucking hard, and I've learned to be a better friend for her. I've tried my best to always support her, check in on her, and just remind her that her presence is appreciated. Also, want to take the time to tell you all matter, and I hope you all have a great day. When I finally started getting trauma-specific therapy for my complex PTSD, for the first time in my life, I really started to understand myself. It also helps me understand the other people in my life who also have CPTSD a lot more, like my parents. I have also started to forgive myself for the past mistakes and the things I did that I used to needlessly blame myself for, like staying in an abusive situation for so long. Finally starting to heal has been a game changer for my life. It was too late to save my marriage, but I'm forging ahead with my new life. My mental health now is better than it has been for a long time. When my wife got fired for being pregnant, she worked in the finance department and was one of their best employees, always getting top performance reviews. After 5 years there, she told them she was 3 months pregnant. 3 days later, she was laid off. But just her. No one else was let go. Ever talk to someone and they say something like, "But they can't do that"? Well, guess what? They can. Sure, it's legal, unethical, and plain wrong, but they can do it. Might ruin everything, but they can still do it. Last summer, I volunteered at a shelter for people experiencing homelessness. I went in thinking I'd just be helping out with meals and stuff, but I ended up having these really deep conversations with people there, hearing their stories, like how quickly life can spiral because of one medical bill or losing a job, made me realize how much I take for granted. I completely changed how I see privilege and the importance of empathy. Honestly, it stuck with me in a big way. Everyone who has posted so far seems to pivot around something sad or terrible. So I wanted to share something positive and uplifting. I'm even considering working this into a book. Back in the mid-'80s, my mother went to a local department store, Hills, and purchased a Christmas present for me. It was a Commodore 64. And if I write that story someday, I'll be able to give an exact date because I still have the receipt. My story will center around that minute on the receipt because it changed my life forever. You see, that year all I wanted was a Commodore VIC-20. It was a vastly inferior computer to the one she got me, and it would have been ignored by me within a few months. The Commodore 64, however, brought me years of playing, learning, and community building. I made friends across my area who shared my nerdy interests. I got to learn about their school districts and their small towns when I visited them. Over time, my online to real friends numbered as high as my friends from school. As I grew older, this led to adventures, girlfriends, and bars, one of which gave me a job as a bouncer, and that's where I met my future wife. The guys in my wedding, all but one I met via the modem, on the back of my Commodore 64. I got my first career-level job working on computers. I started a business with a friend I met online. We ran it for 2 decades. My mom, in the 80s, that minute, that decision changed everything. Everything. If a time traveler wants to undo my life, going to Hills department store in Roast River, Pennsylvania, on that December day and telling my mom the Texas Instruments computer is better would be all it takes. I still distinctly remember the day I got Nintendo, Christmas morning, 1987, and it was pretty awesome. I remember playing the original Super Mario Brothers, and pinball came attached in one game, and my father would tuck me in and he'd be playing pinball while I was like kind of watching him pretending to sleep. That was one game he was always better at me at, but then I got Zelda and Dragon Warrior, and that was it. I was an RPG guy rest of the way. Maybe not as profound as others, but I was raised upper middle class, pretty well off. Not spoiled, wealthy, but also went to summer camp, had a pool, and got what I wanted for Christmas. My dad took me and the daughter of a work associate who was my age out to lunch. We went to Olive Garden. We went to Olive Garden a lot. The girl was amazed. "Do you come here a lot?" "We usually just go to the hot dog heaven for lunch." That was the moment I realized I was privileged. I didn't want to make her feel bad, so I said it was a special occasion since I had a friend with us. But I always made sure to pay attention and be appreciative after that. My best friend died 10 years ago. He was a heroin addict, and our relationship waxed and waned depending on how we affected each other. We were in bands together and lived together and spent a lot of times together. I never did drugs with him, and after 15 years of making excuses for him, I took some space from our relationship. He moved to another city, and we didn't talk too much for a while. A few years passed, and we started talking again more frequently. Then he died before I got a chance to really reconcile with him. The last thing we said to each other, however, was, "I love you." His death made me value my friendships more, because you never know how much time you really have with someone else. Trying out cannabis for the first time, getting high made every physical sensation I experienced more intense and more pleasant. I appreciated food and music more. Sex was like what I think a lot of virgins fantasize their first times will be like. Best of all, that made me relax and laugh. I got to let go of my anxiety and get out of my head and just enjoy being in my body. It's actually affected the way I experience everyday life. I notice little sensations more, like the texture of my old blanket, the pressure against my teeth as I chew on cereal, and the invigorating feeling flowing through my shoulders after I drink water. Every time I've gotten high, I've expanded my awareness of my own body and all the little pleasures it can bring me, and I reap those benefits while sober. I was a fat but muscular kid who got picked on a lot. Then I grew to 6'3", got leaner, and learned how to fight. I thought that what I was supposed to do was show them all and become the bully myself. Then one day as I was leaving school, I saw a kid I had been picking on crying in his mom's car with the windows down. I could hear him saying how he never wanted to come back to school, how he thought he'd never have friends, and basically how miserable he could get. And I realized I was the cause of part of it. I felt like I had to throw up, and I decided then and there to just avoid him for the rest of the year. Never bullied anyone again if I could help it ever since. My seeing how life is precious. I was away from my family from about June 94 until about early 2017, mostly my ex-husband gaslighting me on them. I spent a few good years with my dad and sister after that. Dad was officially diagnosed with dementia in late August 2021. My sister made sure that the POA and trust documents were in place a week before his official diagnosis. Even though she was the primary caretaker, along with her husband, my nephew and in-law's nephew, I did my best to help where I could. That 2 a.m. call on 12/23/21 is something I won't forget for a long time. I wanted to cry then, but couldn't because I was expecting that call. Fast forward a week after my dad died, I'm at the laundromat and I hear some guy playing Christmas music. The floodgates opened and I started bawling. I'm glad the guy was kind enough to share his story of his brother's death. I'm seriously crying as I write this out. I mentally thank that guy for his compassion when I needed it the most. I worked at a grocery store that had one of the random shooting events that they often talked about in the news. I wasn't working the night that it happened, but it still had a very large effect on my experience in life. The shooter comes into the store at about 9 p.m., walks around until about 9:45 p.m., and shoots one of the night shift workers at random and a lady who was just stopping in to get groceries. Cops were called and responded very quickly. The shooter was holding a manager at gunpoint when the cops arrived and shot him before he could shoot the manager. The shooter never had any defined method or motive. He never asked for money. It wasn't a robbery, and he came with weapons, prepared to kill people. I was shook to my core about the experience. Live life really strange. I'd never felt guilty for being alive before. I wasn't there that night, but it could have easily been me who got shot and killed. It took me 2 months to find some sense of normal, and even then, it wasn't the same. That experience really changed me. Before that, I was much more outgoing and cheerful. Now I feel miserable, and I could care less about other people. I don't know what sparked the change other than a desire to find more self-reliance. I feel like I'm walking on a circular road among the damned, waiting for my turn to find the end. I don't know what to say or do anymore. I credit the Marine Corps with making me the man I am today, good, and imparting on me both positive and negative lessons on a personal and professional level. I'll be the first to admit that I wasn't an amazing model Marine, and I didn't have a great enlistment, but I don't hate the Marine Corps as an institution. The Marine Corps, for the large part, treated me okay. It was just shitty individuals who didn't form the majority of the Marines in my unit who ruined a lot of shit for me. Getting a permanent injury while on AD was a particularly huge wake-up call and eye-opener. Before my injury, I always looked at injured Marines with pity, like, damn bro, I actually feel bad for you. But it didn't truly hit how debilitating my injury was until I couldn't do stuff like train or PT or whatever. I'm in college now, and I genuinely believe that the Marine Corps set me up for success, seeing as I made the Dean's List, not only because of the GI Bill and disability pay, but just in terms of my attitude and views on the simple stuff, like showing up to class early or training on time. Being involved in kind of serious online bullying drama. I was in the periphery, but whatever. It involved this one really toxic poster and his army of sock puppets. Longtime posters kind of lived on this forum and had real-life friends that turned against them in what became a sort of online civil war. The whole thing turned kind of Lord of the Flies. People were hurt, told to kill themselves, told they should have been aborted. Friendships were lost, people were stalked and threatened in real life. The mods turned a blind eye because the drama was increasing traffic on the forum. The worst thing was how longtime friends turned against each other, and the bulk of the forum posters just went along with it for a long time, myself included. In all fairness, it had been a toxic forum, where posters turned a blind eye to the bullying that went on, long before the sock puppets fiasco. It was exactly the atmosphere that gave rise to the sock puppets drama in the first place. People were happy to join the ranks of the sock puppets, not knowing that they were social sock puppets, of course, because suddenly the bullies were being bullied until it became too much. Anyway, it made me seriously rethink my participation in the drama, the people I hurt, my willingness to go along with all the toxic behavior on the promise of attention and internet popularity, and to see how I was capable of this evil behavior.